The story begins with a dark, hooded figure walking into a hospital and then approaching an old man inside a ward. The old man looked as if he had been very ill for several days. The old man began to panic upon seeing this hooded figure. The hooded figure then grabbed the old man's hand, and this is where the old man's death ends. Then we see the hooded figure walking outside, removing his hood, but his face is obscured by the darkness. Then we see a scene from 6 months earlier, where we see Daniel, a single father, driving a car. He is accompanied by his daughter, Colette, and their dog, Charles. They both appear quite happy here. But later we realize that Daniel is actually homeless. This meant he had no place to live, and so he relied on his friend Greg to take him in until he was settled, or at least for a few days. Now, I'd like to point out that Daniel used to be a dancer. However, due to injuries, his entire career was ruined, and just a few days ago, Daniel had to vacate his apartment due to non-payment of rent. Daniel calls Greg, but Greg flatly refuses, saying he won't keep him with him because Daniel had his dog with him and he didn't want them staying there with him. Daniel also didn't want to leave his dog alone, so Daniel has to leave, but he can't tell his daughter. Afterward, they arrive at the parking lot where they were going to spend the night. Another car was parked next to their car, and it leaves as night falls. But under the car, there was a bag lying in the parking space. Daniel went closer to look at it, and out of curiosity, he opened it and found a box inside. Inside the box was a note that read, "Once you receive the money, you will be bound to a job you will have to do for the rest of your life." Daniel was a little surprised. He checked the box further and found a lot of money inside, which surprised Daniel. However, he repacked the bag, put it away, and returned to his car. The next day, he was very curious about the bag, wondering if it was there. He went to check, but the money was still there. Daniel took out the money and put it in his car. However, his daughter and dog, Charles, were not inside the car, so he began searching for them outside. He found his dog, but as soon as he touches his dog, it disappears. Daniel is at a loss for how this happened. He looks at his reflection, where he sees a skull instead of his face. This frightens him. Just then, his daughter arrives, frightened by the sight of her father. This means that his daughter, too, was seeing a skull instead of her father. Upon seeing this, his daughter runs away in fear, and Daniel, too, is terrified. So, he checks the bag inside the car and finds another note, which states that until he repays his debt 11 times over, he will remain a mortal figure to the world, and anyone he touches will be destroyed. To put it simply, Daniel has now become the Grim Reaper. Seeing all this, Daniel is deeply shocked. So, first, he covers his face with a cap and a handkerchief and goes to his daughter, telling her to understand the entire instructions first, because no one leaves so much money just like that. Anyway, he meets his daughter and tells her to get into the car, covering even his fingertips with his clothes, so that no one will die if he touches them. After this, we see a scene from 6 months later, where we see the same hooded man, who is none other than Daniel. Yes, and because of this, Daniel had now become a grimmer, which required him to do this work. Therefore, he had to kill people who were sick and about to die, which was his job. And through this, he was going to repay 11 times the money he had taken. Anyway, here, Daniel kills the old man we saw at the beginning of the movie. Well, after killing him, the old man's soul goes on an eternal journey, and then Daniel receives a token that he must submit to this supernatural agent, and he must do this until he pays his full debt. We learn that Daniel was working another part-time job to support his daughter, working at a shop owned by a man named Sony, who is visually impaired. This allows Daniel to go around him without covering his face. Now, you might wonder how Daniel got caught in this situation. When he took the money, a deal was signed where Daniel was to act as the Grim Reaper, as he didn't read the second note. You might also be wondering how he knew the victims. Each night, a name was printed on Daniel's body, and that was how he knew who he had to kill. Daniel could return to his former self, but he would have to work honestly. As soon as his debt is over, he would become human again. After this, he approaches the same agent and gives him the token. The next scene shows Colette, who lived with her father, but they shared separate rooms. Colette also missed school. Due to problems with her father, she had no friends and couldn't even see him. In the evening, Colette tells her father that they've run out of food, so Daniel goes to Sony's shop, where another woman was working there in Sony's place. When Sony isn't around, Daniel asks about Sony, but the woman doesn't know about it. He steals the food and runs away. One day, Daniel arrives at home. A woman from Child Protection Services comes to meet Daniel. Apparently, she wants to talk about Colette and why he doesn't send her to school. Daniel makes excuses, and here he is, sitting with his entire face covered. Whenever anyone asks him why he hides his face, he says he has a skin disease that could be transmitted to others. So, at night, we see Daniel complete his work and hand over the token to the agent. You already know what his job is, after which he goes to work with Sony because he could go around her without covering his face, as Sony would be less visible. Now, during work, a name is printed on his hands, which means he had to kill someone. Finally, he returns home at night and goes to his separate room where his daughter was trying to sleep, but someone had entered her room. Seeing this, she starts screaming, and her father asks her what happened. She tells him that she saw the skeleton-like man again yesterday. Hearing this, Daniel says it must have been a nightmare, and we learn that his daughter was often haunted by a skeleton-like figure, and it might have been Daniel. The next day, Colette is at home when the woman from Child Protection Services calls out to her from outside the house. Colette panics. The woman comes inside and starts questioning her, just to make sure she's not in any trouble. But Colette starts talking to her, telling her about her imaginary friends. And Daniel overhears all of this. He comes out, covering his face, and tells the woman to leave, as he doesn't want anyone to bother him or his daughter. The woman then says she'll ask a few questions and leave. The scene shifts to night, where Daniel is at work, when someone comes up to him and starts screaming loudly. This happens to Daniel often. He sees such strange people. When the agent is asked about this, the agent explains that these are all lost souls who panic after their demise because no one can see them. However, Daniel is a Grim Reaper, so he could see them. Daniel asks, if he doesn't give the agent a token for 24 hours after taking a human life, will that break the deal and return it to normal? The agent replies, no, but that Daniel will lose his life. He then goes to Sony's shop, where the same girl is, and a police officer is also present. Seeing Daniel, the girl tells the police that he's the thief. The police chase him and catch him. They try to remove his face covering, but Daniel manages to break free and escape. He quickly takes his daughter and starts running, telling her that they'll go somewhere else. We then see Daniel enter the house of the same old man he killed. At the beginning of the movie, he was supposed to stay there for a while. Well, we later learn that his daughter wants to become a dancer, so she starts practicing. We also knew that Daniel was a dancer, so you should understand where this interest came from. Daniel is encouraging his daughter, but then another person's name appears on Daniel's body, meaning that now he has to go to take that person's life. He quickly escapes, but his daughter follows him, and he convinces her not to follow him. His daughter then asks him where he goes every night. Is he a cop? He agrees. He leaves Colette sitting in a spot and leaves, telling her not to go anywhere. Morning arrives, and Daniel hasn't returned yet, meaning he's late for work. Colette awakens to find herself in the woods, surrounded by eerie sounds. Hearing these sounds, Colette begins running, where she finds her father sitting. However, Daniel's face wasn't covered. Colette sees Daniel's skull-like face, and upon seeing this, she begins running, and Daniel is right behind her, trying to stop her. However, Colette ends up on a construction site, where some workers manage to contain her, along with a police officer. Her father arrives, his face covered, but she insists that this isn't her father. Daniel claims he's her father, but by then, a construction worker had come to stop. Daniel accidentally touches him, killing the construction worker on the spot. Seeing this, Daniel runs away in fear. The scene then shifts to a woman from Child Protection Services about to send Colette to a foster home. She felt her father couldn't properly care for her. Most importantly, Colette didn't recognize her own father. But for now, Colette is going to stay at the woman's house under her supervision. Obviously, Colette was very scared and didn't know that he was her father. That's Daniel's terrifying side. The situation had become so difficult for her to accept. Then we see Daniel, who was with Sunny, who, after talking with Sunny, learns that Sunny is ill and won't live long. We then see Daniel outside, deeply disheartened. He was trapped. Daniel then sneaks a look at his daughter, who now has a new family, the same woman from Child Protection Services and her husband with whom she was eating dinner. Daniel, overjoyed to see that his daughter is now living in a good home, as he had never been able to do anything right for her, leaves without saying anything, happy and a little disappointed. After Daniel leaves, we see Colette going to her room, but the woman's husband stops her and tells her to finish her dinner. The man asks Colette to pass him something, but Colette doesn't listen, lost in thought. This angers the man, who begins to lash out at Colette. This reveals that the man is an aggressive person and is certainly not good for Colette's future. Well, after this, we see Colette with a scar on her cheek, which was obviously caused by the same man. Meanwhile, we see Daniel with Sunny, who was in the hospital. Sunny asks him about his daughter, to which he explains that she's with her new family. Sunny asks him why he's depressed, to which Daniel replies that he won't believe her. Then, Sunny's name appears on Daniel's hand, implying that Sunny's time had come. Daniel touches Sunny, and this ends Sunny right there. Daniel can now see his soul, about to enter the portal for its eternal journey. Sunny, realizing Daniel is a Grim Reaper, says goodbye to Daniel for the last time, telling him to go to his daughter because she was his true family. Daniel takes a chance and keeps Sunny's token. Once the 24 hours are up, Daniel returns to normal. But this time, he's pursued by a masked man who threatens to kill him. And this man is also a Grim Reaper. He was after him, but Daniel needs to go to his daughter. He sneaks into his daughter's room where she's sleeping. Daniel turns on the lamp, and her daughter awakens. Her daughter is overjoyed to see her father. Daniel reveals that he's come to see her for the last time. Colette retorts that he promised her he'd never leave her. Hearing this, Daniel resolves to take his daughter with him and brings her outside the house. Their voices awaken the husband of the Child Protection Services officer, who takes out a gun and pursues them. The husband of the Child Protection Services officer shoots Daniel. But Daniel somehow manages to move on. A little further on, he spots a Grim Reaper who kills the husband of a woman from Child Protection Services for interfering. After this, the Grim Reaper went after Daniel. Daniel fights him and wins, after which the scene changes and we see Daniel and Colette together. Both were now fine and happy. But then their dog, Charles, comes to them, and Daniel spots blood on his hands, meaning all he was seeing were his last glimpses before death. And in reality, he had already been destroyed by the Grim Reaper. And now his time had come, and Daniel stood before the portal where his daughter was looking at him, crying. In fact, his daughter was able to see him, and then Daniel apologizes to his daughter because he could no longer be with her for the rest of his life. And here Daniel departs on his eternal journey, that is, into the afterlife. Well, the scene then moves to 6 months later, where Colette is learning to dance. She sees the spirit of her father, who has come to see her. Colette is overjoyed to see her father, implying that somehow Colette's father, Daniel, had kept his promise and was watching over her from heaven. With this, the film ends. So, friends, this was the story of the film By, which means Father. The Grim Reaper and this movie offers a profound message. Through metaphor, we are shown a dark reality. Essentially, we are shown a mirror depicting humans destroying their own humanity due to their greed, guilt, and survival instinct. The film's eviction notice concept symbolizes the inevitable end from which no one can escape, meaning death and destruction will continue to haunt you, no matter how hard you try. And the line, "Until you've paid back 11 times what you've taken," reveals society's distorted justice system where one mistake, a small greed, or a need forces you to go through the motions again and again.